We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday, and we have our favorite guest back, Old Soul. We told you she'd be on every week, and damned if she isn't here. Thank you for coming in, Old Soul. This is one of those weeks where there isn't a lot of stuff going on, little things here and there, but it's
Yeah.
hard for one old white guy to come up with an hour's worth of content when there isn't a lot to feed off of. So to have Old Soul, who's as smart or smarter than any of us, and has a way of handling herself with words, I am thankful to have you on. Not only because I like to see your face and I like to talk to you, but I could use a hand today. I don't have the cold anymore, but
Yeah, you sound better.
yeah, it only took a month. I mean, Jesus. And I wonder, I had a vaccination for RSV, the flu, and COVID, but I don't know what it was I had, but it was it kept going and going. I'm just now sleeping in my bed. I've been sleeping in a
Oh, wow.
recliner chair for 2, 3 weeks. So, and then I go to my bed and I got a backache because I'm used to sleeping in the recliner chair. It's fucked up. Anyway, how was your Christmas?
It was good. It was really good. I had fun. I got to meet my daughter's dad's girlfriend because his mom's been married for like ever, and I've already met his mom, his stepdad, and his dad was like this forever bachelor kind of guy, really, really cool. But I got to meet his girlfriend, and she was pretty cool. I liked her.
Did you?
Yeah, so I was like, oh my gosh, there's like nobody I don't like yet. And his dad said, well, wait until you meet my brother. And I didn't know his brother was like a Trump guy. And this is like the first Trump guy that I met in person. And he was watching something the last time Trump was like out here speaking. He was in Reno, I think. And so I don't know what made me do it, but I walked over to the television and I turned the sound off of it.
Really?
And I was like, forget the noise, forget the distraction and all of that. Read the words and read what he's saying. Because I think a lot of like Trump being such a buffoon is kind of like his strength. Because if you had someone come out and say the things that Trump says, like if Obama said it, forget it if anybody said it would be taken seriously because they're looked at as a serious person. But because Trump is looked at as such a clown, it's easy. Like he can say he wants to be a dictator in one sentence, and then he's talking about golden showers in the next. So of course the golden shower kind of like overshadows the dictator and the seriousness that he was saying. And he kind of was like reading it, and then he said, is there something wrong with the closed captions? I can't like follow what he's saying. And I was like, that's because he's not making any sense. If you tune the noise out and you pay attention to what he's saying, then it hits a little different.
Well,
And
I
then
think
he was just like, "Oh, I don't want to do politics on holidays." And then I was like, "Okay." And then after that, he was actually like not a bad person once he shut up about Trump. So I don't know what made me turn the sound off. I just did because I don't know, but it works.
well, but if a Trump humper comes in, an old soul sitting over there, I don't think he realizes what he's fucking getting into. It's not going to pan out well for him if there is a debate that goes on. And I think you're absolutely right. I think it's kind of like, when you have your favorite song on the radio
Mhm.
and you kind of sing along and you really don't know the words because you don't understand the words. And then you read the lyrics one day and go, that's what they were fucking saying?
Yeah,
Jesus Christ. Um, like the Beatles, she was just 17. You know what I mean? Now, back in the 60s, that was cool.
yeah,
Nowadays, it's a little sketchy.
yeah,
But but I think if people that are Trump humpers really had the capability, and I don't even think it's about not having a desire to listen. I really honestly believe some people can't comprehend it. They only hear what they want to hear. And as
yeah,
long as somebody is speaking their language, they're happy about it. So yeah, if we could get people to understand what he's saying, and I think that's why it would probably be a wonderful thing for having the trials on television where people could sit
yeah.
down and watch it. Now, of course, Georgia will be, but the feds, it would be nice for that too. So this
I mean,
guy,
not only that, but what he says in public is the complete opposite of what he says in court or in trial.
Right,
Even like, he says that he's a, America first type of person and he's down for America. And then he goes to court and was like, yeah, but I didn't take that oath. I don't have any loyalty to America. So I think it would do not all of his supporters, but some of them some good to hear what he really feels or what he really thinks instead of the spin that he gives them.
right. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing people have to understand and what some Trump uppers don't grasp. This guy lies continually. Almost everything
Mhm.
he says is a lie or a distraction or a diversion. I wanted
Yeah.
to uh, I wanted to get your insight on something, a couple of things that are going on regarding this attempt to exclude Donald Trump from the presidential ballots, or at least the primary ballots to begin with the Supreme Courts and the 14th Amendment. Now we know um, that the Colorado Supreme Court has said we're taking Donald Trump off the ballot. And of course, you knew that Donald Trump was going to appeal it to the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
He hadn't done it until Wednesday, yesterday. He hadn't done it at all. And actually, it's not Donald Trump, it's the Republican Party of Colorado. And so it's going to go to the Supreme Court, and they're going to have to decide what to do with that. And frankly, I think that's kind of a gamble because um, with that, he may be setting a long domino effect on the whole fucking country if he loses it with the U.S. Supreme Court. But I'm curious as to how you see it.
I I don't think that he qualifies to be president. I don't think he should be on the ballot at all. I really don't. But I don't hang my hat on one way or the other. And I'm not a really big fan of him being removed, to be honest with you,
Really?
because I think that this is the Republicans Party's mess and they have to clean up their mess, to be honest with you. And I do think the only thing that's going to make them face that, like if we remove him from the ballot and he's disqualified, it gives them that talking point and saying,
Right.
oh, well, he couldn't be reelected because they removed him from the ballot. I think what we need to do is we need to vote as a country and show the path that they're trying to lead us down. We're not going down that path. We're not there for that. And I think it's even more important for Republican voters to make sure that the Republican politicians know that they're not okay with any of this. And they don't have a chance to let them know that if you remove him from the ballot. And that's my take on it. So it's not that I feel that he deserves to be on the ballot and it doesn't apply to him. I just feel like we need to make a statement as a country to the Republican Party. And then those Republican voters, they need to step up and they need to make sure that they let their leaders know this isn't what we want. We want whatever the old policies were, um, their belief in God and everything else that they try to push out on everyone. I think that they need to make sure that they take their party back and reclaim that. And they're not able to do that if we remove him from the ballot. It's just kind of like removing their chance. And because if not, like for the next 4 years, all we're going to hear about is he was disqualified and this and that. We need to just take that out of the equation by making sure that we vote against him.
And you feel pretty confident that he won't win in 2024? I mean, everybody knows what I think, but how do you feel about it?
I feel pretty confident in that. I think people are pretty much like exhausted with Trump. Even if you look at his rallies, like before it went from stadiums and then it went to like college gymnasiums and stuff, and then it went to high school gymnasiums, and now I'm seeing that they take a high school gymnasium and they cut it in half, and then they pack the people in there to make it look like it's full.
Right.
So I really do think a lot of the stuff that he's doing and saying, people just haven't had a chance yet to kind of let them know that they're not okay with that. It's just this huge illusion. And I think it's time for people to just kind of like pull that curtain down and see, the monster that's behind it. And by taking him off the ballot, we don't get the chance to do that.
It's interesting your view on this whole 14th Amendment and the Supreme Court and all that stuff. is an interesting point of view. I hadn't really thought of it that way. And I told you before, you do this to me all the time. You give me stuff that I hadn't considered. And it pisses me off, honestly, old soul, because I'm known for looking at all the angles. And you always come with one I didn't look at. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I take a look at what you said about him not being taken off the ballot and just going and flat out losing. It sounds
Mhm.
to me like you're suggesting, and I make up analogies. The analogy is here, instead of taking Donald Trump and putting him on a timeout, you need him to go to the yard, get a switch, and get a good old country ass whooping, right? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Yep. And there's only one way to do that, and that's the only way to show him. But more importantly, that's the only way to show the Republican Party as a whole. Because once we show them that, and once the people who vote for them, their constituents, show them that, then they're going to be done with Trump.
Yeah,
And he needs to feel that rejection. He needs to see us work against him and reject him. He needs to see the Republican Party reject him. And that's going to affect him just as much as it is having his money taken away. The only thing he's going to be able to say is it was stolen, it was rigged, it was whatever. But at that point, there's not going to be any Republican Party behind him amplifying that message. He's
right.
just going to be sitting in a room by himself talking in a corner.
I, th-
Nobody's going to care at that point.
I think you make a good point. It's the one thing that we always hear, the reason why Gerald Ford uh, uh, pardoned Richard Nixon. He said, we want the country to heal.
Hmm.
Um, and I think you're right. If Donald Trump just flat out gets his ass whooped, which he
Yep.
would, I think, um, that is the only thing that's going to heal the country and get the Republicans to stand up and say, all right, we fucked up. If they take him off the ballot, then they can say, well, if he would have been on the ballot, he would have won, or this or
Right.
that. And I hadn't considered that. My goal is when you have a fire, just put that fucker out as fast as you can. But I
Hmm.
should be looking a little further down the road and realize that fire could leave some embers if we don't fucking stomp it out. And
Yeah.
the one way to do that is to teach the entire Republican Party a lesson by blowing them all out, having a big blue wave. Then they got to sit back and go, now what the fuck?
Right. And then he's not going to go down by himself. There'll be a lot of people that he takes with him.
Oh yeah,
And then I do think, just kind of by ideas, that the Republican Party is pretty regressive. But the next generation, they are a little bit more progressive than the one before them.
right, right.
And they can rebuild it in a more, I don't even want to say 2023, but at least in a, you know 2000s type of mindset than this 1960s thing that they have going on. But the only way to do that is to make them step back, look at what happened to them, and just kind of like start to rework the image of the Republican Party that they want. And I think they'll still have some of those lame ideas, but they would want to make sure that they at least present it in a way that it's acceptable to the American people. And they'll have to change some of those ideas and kind of progress a little bit more. And the only way to do that is to defeat them, because that's the only way they're forced to change. They're not going to change if you give them an option. You have to force them to change,
Now,
unfortunately.
now, when we were talking about this 14th Amendment thing, I think your point of view is absolutely spot on. I have two questions actually. Now, in your point of view, does he have to be the nominee and get his ass kicked? Or what if the Republican Party just says, we don't want you as a nominee, or for whatever reason he can't do it? Is losing the nomination enough to set shit straight?
For the Republican Party, yes, because the first thing they're going to do is instinctively move on to the next and how to try to make this person win. So by nature, they're going to have to leave Trump behind in order to do that.
Right,
Any candidate knows that associating their name with his is going to be a loss for them, so they're not going to want to do that. So that will get him out of the way. However, I think it'll be more effective if it was like on a primary ballot, because they will really have their hopes up like, yeah, we got this, and they'll be amped up and ready to go. And what a deflated balloon to just blow them out in a primary.
right.
Um, That would be my preference, but I would take either way. Him being rejected, the voters in the Republican Party rejecting Trump, that's going to hit them harder than they even could imagine.
Yeah, and it would affect not only Trump, but all those people that have sidled up next to Trump for all these years. They
Right.
would have to go down with him because the stink will remain on them for eternity. Now, when we were talking about the Colorado thing and having it go to the Supreme Court, you laid out all the possible angles. They could either not accept it, not hear it,
Mm.
which would mean it would go back to the states and they would all individually have to do it, but it would be easier because the Supreme Court's already weighed in. Or they could agree with the Colorado Supreme Court, which could be devastating too, because it would potentially take him off the ballots on a number, if not all, the states. And then
Mhm.
there's the one where they would decide that you can't take him off the ballot. And that's the one you thought that they would go with. Are you still feeling that way now?
I still feel that way. Um, I just see them looking for an excuse to justify that ruling. And I think that's pretty much what they're doing right now, especially just with the appeals court and everything. I think they're looking for an excuse to just say, for whatever reason, like a technicality, even if it goes against previous statements that they've made, I
Yeah.
really do think they're going to keep him on the ballot.
Okay. And you don't think that they're aware of the scrutiny they're under now? They're under a microscope. They fucked up a lot. Their credibility is in question. Their integrity is in question. You don't think they're worried about that? Do you think they're so arrogant where they would just say, fuck it, we don't care if you're mad at us. We're just going to do what we do?
Yeah, because I haven't seen anything they've shown us to make me think any different. They still do what they want, how they want to do it. I think sometimes they might try to, I kind of look at it as kind of like throwing us a bone to make it seem like, oh, they can be even-handed here.
Right, right.
But I don't really think they mean that at all. I think they try to do certain things to maybe keep their supreme beings that they see themselves as, maybe try to keep people from pushing stacking the court type of thing. But when it comes to Trump and the incentives that they're getting from the Republican Party, I don't think that's going to sway
Okay.
them to do the right thing in this instance, because they could have been done the right thing with Trump. You know what I mean?
Right, right. Now, this isn't a competition. We'll just see how this goes. You think they're going to say, no, he stays on the ballot? I personally think they'll just say, we don't want any of that shit. Just keep it away from us. It's an easy way out for them because if they take it on, they're going to piss off somebody on either side, either the MAGA fucks or the rest of the country. And I
Yeah.
just don't think they want the heat. But I base that on nothing. It's just a gut feeling. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. I would presume that they're going to respond fairly soon. I know with Colorado, they're saying that they they need to start printing ballots on January 4th, which is, a week away.
That's
I
on
don't,
Tuesday.
yeah, and I don't know if the Supreme Court's going to react that quickly. And if they don't, what happens then? Do they still print the ballots with no Donald Trump? I mean, frankly, if the Supreme Court doesn't react by then it's already done. He's already off the ballot. So do
I
they
mean,
then have to print new ballots or what?
look at them using Trump's delay tactic. They're just dragging their feet. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and then Republicans, they do have a thing for the dramatics. So it might be Monday at midnight before they give their ruling or whatever. I really do think they'll keep them on there. I don't
Okay.
see any. I think they'll find a reason and they'll just keep them on there. That's my
Well,
gut feeling because I don't trust them like that.
um, if you're right and I'm wrong, I'll take the beating. If I'm right and you're wrong, I'll just shut my mouth because I'm not fucking with old soul. There's a lot of
I'll
people
take
out
the
there.
beating.
No, 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 I won't do that. Um, and then, the other Supreme Court situation you have is the immunity.
Mm.
And I think that's a far different situation. Were you surprised when the Supreme Court said, look, yeah, we're not going to take this up on a fast track. We're just going to wait for the appellate court. Did that surprise you at all?
No, I think they're just going to wait for the lower court's ruling, and then they'll just be like, okay, yeah, we're just going to roll with that, or we're not going to take it up. The lower court's ruling stands, and then that gives them an easy out on that one. I don't even think they're thinking about it. I think they're just going to let the lower court decide and stay out of it.
Well, yeah, it's so ridiculous and so frivolous that the Supreme Court couldn't come up with a ridiculous loophole to fit that one through. And the ramifications after the fact would be so negative, not only to the Supreme Court, but the country, and to the Republicans for that matter, because as soon as they decide that, then Joe Biden immediately becomes immune from doing whatever the fuck he wants. The only problem with that is Joe Biden's a decent guy, so I don't know if he would abuse it. But in that circumstances, I would kind of like to see him put Donnie in jail.
Yeah, I think that it kind of like proves my point a little bit. Like they're doing whatever they can to stay out of it, and they're looking for a reason to kind of just have their hands as less dirty as possible.
Yeah,
So if they, you know what I mean? If they know how frivolous that is, they could have easily just taken that and been like, "Nah, you're not a king. You're not immune from anything. Go somewhere with this." But the fact that they didn't lets me know that they're just going to piggyback off of whatever the lower court does,
they're going to say,
and
yeah,
not
what they
even take
said.
it up. Hmm.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
And
That's what I think about that. We'll see though.
yeah, and it's going to be what's interesting about that particular case, since it is a simple one, and I think the Supreme Court will say you're not immune from everything. Uh, that basically is Donald Trump's defense, not in just this case, but in all his cases. That puts him
Yeah,
in a fucked up position as far as going to trial, because one of his main defense strategies is out the fucking window. And for years they've been talking about this immunity, and every judge says no, you don't have immunity. But when the Supreme Court says you don't have immunity, there ain't nowhere else to go. That's the answer. That's the decision.
yeah. He doesn't have a defense because that's a BS excuse. But the other reason that Trump doesn't have an excuse is because he talks way too much.
Yeah,
Every time he comes out, and I used to think that maybe his legal team and himself were auditioning defenses to see how how the public would act, which will kind of give them a general idea of how the jury would act, or some of the obstacles that Jack Smith could throw at them.
right.
But in doing so, it lets Jack Smith's team know what they're thinking and what they're planning. And so I know on one of them, he was saying he was just taking advice from counsel. So the first thing Jack Smith does is he goes to Tanya Chutkin and he says, "Hey, if he's going to be saying defensive counsel, we need this from the defense team. We need this, that, and the third." So then they drop that defense and they try to move on with something else. But because he already told them what his game plan was, the only thing he has left is I was immune from it.
Right.
So he gave all of his defenses away. If he would have just like sat down and been quiet and not talked strategy and not told everybody what he was thinking, then Jack Smith would have to kind of guess and see which way he was going to go and maybe try to plan for each possibility. But he doesn't have to plan for on any of that. He already went to court and shut each one of those defenses down. He doesn't have anything left. All he had to do was shut up, but of course he didn't.
Well, let's be honest. If in 2016 Donald Trump wins the presidency, if he shuts up, listens to some people, does the right things, keeps his mouth shut, he wouldn't be in this position right now. But no, he's got to wade into it and fuck things up. And every
Yeah,
time he talks, he fucks it up a little bit more. So as far as I'm concerned, keep yapping, Donnie, because you're
yeah.
just hurting yourself. Now, I don't know if you heard that Jack Smith made a motion or something to Judge Chutkin yesterday. And basically, he's looking ahead to what might be in this trial. And this trial is this trial for the election interference in DC. Jack Smith said, please bar any political rhetoric or any kind of, claims that have nothing to do with the case. It's just
Mhm.
there to create chaos and make noise. I mean, he knows what's coming when they do
Right.
this. They don't have a defense, so they got to start spewing stuff in order to distract and divert. And Jack Smith's on top of it and saying, we need to cut that shit out. Now, there's no way that Chutkin doesn't agree with him on this.
Right. She's definitely gonna agree with that. There's no reason not to. Because when it comes to trials, it's all about the heart of the matter.
Right,
If it has nothing to do with the trial, it has no business in the trial. There's a reason why certain I'm sorry, defendants, we can't bring up their past bad acts or criminal records because what does that have to do with what's going on right now? So if
right.
it has nothing to do with this current case that we're on right now, we don't need to hear about it. We don't need to bring it up. Like, why would you be talking about January 6th and you're talking about Biden and the border or whatever? So I think, once you start to cut down all that noise, there's nothing else that he can do. But I think she'll definitely rule in his favor. I think she'll make it look like she's taking her time to think about it, but we already know what that rule is going to be.
Well, and we've seen what Jack Smith is worried about already in the New York case, the lawsuit, them talking about shit that has nothing to do with anything. And at this point, Judge Engoron is a little annoyed by the bullshit and the chaos that they're creating.
Yeah,
We're getting close on this one. This lawsuit, all the witnesses have already spoken or already testified. I think we've got closing arguments coming up soon, if early part
yeah,
of January, and then after that, a decision will be made. It won't go to a jury. It's only going to the one guy that Donald Trump has pissed off the most, that being the judge.
yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see uh, how that goes down. Is there any way that I mean, Donald Trump keeps thinking he's going to get out of this or he wants the trial dismissed. I don't know how you dismiss a trial that's already been decided. We're just
Yeah.
in the sentencing phase, essentially, if it were a criminal case. So, but they tried everything, and now they're going to have to sit back and wait and see what the judge says. And I just cannot understand how the lawyers and Donald Trump didn't know that if you've got one guy deciding your fate, probably best not to piss him off. But they went the totally opposite way.
Yeah, and then the crazy thing is, if he loses and he wants to appeal, he can actually, because you have to put that bond up,
Right,
he can have a bond hearing and have that bond reduced to something more reasonable and affordable. But guess who he has to negotiate with at the bond hearing? The judge that he's pissed off and the DA that he's pissed off. So, what incentive do they have to work with him at the bond hearing?
right.
I definitely see them saying like, hey, if you can't make bond, then start giving us the keys. I don't understand his strategy there, but I understand Trump's strategy. But I think that his attorneys are trying to think of a decent word, opportunist.
Yeah,
They know what's up. They know what to say to him, especially Haba, to get him comfortable or so that he's not so angry and animated. So they say what they need to say to appease him at the same time looking out for their own best interest. They don't file things on time. They don't write briefs. They write public statements from a publicist pretty much. They don't argue the facts. They don't be quiet and keep their kind of like defenses to themselves. They just put it all out there. And when you listen to her talk, she talks about when she's in the White House during the next administration. So she has her own aspirations. I think they are looking out for themselves and they see Trump as pretty much like a useful idiot. He can help them climb up the ranks within that Republican Party. They don't care whether he loses this case or not, because when he loses, which he's already lost, they can just go out and say whatever it is that they want to say, keep him happy, but at the same time keep themselves rising up to wherever they want to be within this corrupt party.
if I'm Alina Habba, instead of
Yeah.
getting confident about being in the White House, I might want to check with a former young and pretty lawyer that Donald Trump had, Jenna Ellis, and say, how did that work out for you? She's having to roll on Donald Trump and probably will potentially see some jail time, not as much as if she didn't roll on Donald Trump. But that's the thing. I don't know how the lawyers can see this as working out well for them. Uh,
They know better.
they
It's
did
just that Trump doesn't know better.
right. Well, I liken what's going on with Donald Trump when he was president and now with his lawyers as a syndrome I'm familiar with. as I've said before, I had a father who was a narcissist and had a tendency to go off the deep end and rant and rave, much like Donald Trump did. And when you're
Mhm.
a little kid living in that world and you have somebody like that, what you do is, I mean, there's nothing you can do to control the situation directly. So
Right.
what you do is you do anything and everything and say everything and do whatever daddy wants so daddy doesn't go off the deep end. You try to divert him, you try to distract him with things or just agree with him or whatever. And unfortunately, that's what happened while he was in the White House, and that's what's
Mhm.
happening with his lawyers now. But we can see what happens in the end. A little kid just has to go through the shit and grows up and gets the hell out. But these people are going to have to deal with the aftermath of this because some of these people are going to get sanctioned, fined, disbarred, thrown in jail. I don't understand how they're willing to risk all that just to make sure Donnie doesn't get mad.
Well, you have to look at their backgrounds and look at the people who've dropped out versus those who are still there.
Right.
And these are the people that really don't care about their futures like that. I think Alina Habba was the attorney of record for like a parking garage
Yeah.
that her husband owned. So it wasn't even like a job that she went out and got for herself. I saw when she was like in court one of the days, she had on her laptop the logo of her law firm on there, just free advertising. I don't really think she cares about the future like that. She's in the right now trying to see as far as she can take it, especially with the debt that her and her husband have. So I think she's just doing what she can to get what she can while she can get it. Like she's literally like hustling Trump and he doesn't even see it. And she's getting paid to speak at these Turning Point ranches or wherever she's speaking at. She's getting paid to speak there.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah,
she's just grifting with the rest of them. That's all. It's just that some people are a little bit more grimy than other people. And she's one of the most grimiest people I've ever seen. She's so like out for herself. Trump is an opportunity and she's taken it. Even how she got to be his lawyer was insane. That's why she's getting sued for that. You know what I mean? She's just one of those people. Her and Trump is like hand in hand. They're one
right.
and the same, except for she's a little bit smarter than him. She getting over, that's all.
Yeah, that's true. But you got to wonder if it's going to work. I mean, it's a dumb strategy. When I was a young man, I worked at a radio station, and at this radio station on the weekends we had experts come in and do shows. The auto guy, the auto talk guy, answered questions, and we had one um, that was basically talking about legal stuff. And the guy who was on the show was the lawyer, was probably the highest profile defense attorney in the Midwest. His name was
Oh,
Ron
wow.
Neshbesher. And he was a great guy. He was a good guy. I wouldn't have want to gone up against him. And I asked him about, why do you do some pro bono things? And he told me, he said, Mike, here's the deal. If you're a lawyer, you're going to get money. You're either going to get paid in cash or take somebody's house or car, whatever it is to get cash. He said, but in some of the high profile cases, it's great advertising. So it's worth
Yeah.
it for me to represent, this serial killer or whatever, because I'll come off, as a powerful attorney, and it will benefit me with future clients. And I get that. I get that completely. But with Donald Trump, there isn't one lawyer that's been tied to Donald Trump um, up to this point that people are saying, wow, that's a good lawyer. I want to have that lawyer. I mean, they've all been made to look foolish. They've all been made to look corrupt or criminal in their own right. If they're doing this for just the cash up front, that's fine. But it seems to me they're ruining their career. They better be getting a lot this time because I'm afraid they may be out of business after this. Maybe they just want to work on Fox News and be an expert like some lawyers do.
Well, that depends on how you look at it because these are no names. And if
Yeah,
I was Alina Hoppe and I was a lawyer and I was not a successful lawyer, I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't have a career before Trump. I'm gonna get what I can get right now and then get out. I mean, I wasn't a successful attorney before. I wasn't a
Right.
good attorney before. I wasn't getting paid before. So what do I have to lose? I just get my money, get out, and then just move on to the next thing. It's not like she's gonna go back to being a credible attorney when she didn't have a reputation to ruin in the first place. When
Right.
she came on the scene, everybody was like, "Who is this?" Like we didn't know who she was. She wasn't one of those people. And those people who actually did care about their reputation or had a little bit of something to stand on, they bowed out. They're gone now. So these are just like those no name hanger on type of people. They weren't anything before. They're not going to be anything after. So what do they have to lose? And I
I
think that's the type of person she is.
I don't know, old soul, that parking lot fuck you money is pretty serious, you know. So she represented this parking lot that was owned by her husband.
Yeah.
So she can say, I got hired by my husband to handle a parking lot. And
Well, they
that'll
don't tell you that part. You have to kind of like dig and figure that out.
and it would be tough being in business or married to you because you're a digging motherfucker.
I try because I have like just a curiosity, like who is this person?
Right.
Like what is making this person like be captivated by so many people, or so many people are captivated by this person. And then, you can just see the grift and like you can smell it on her a mile away. I know that um, she screwed someone who worked for Trump. She had a sexual harassment suit against
Really?
one of the employees at Mar-a-Lago. And
Wow.
this employee had an attorney. And so Alina Habba, she was just a member of the club. And so she goes up to this woman, I think she was like a server, and she tells the server, like, hey, I know you have an attorney, but just to let you know that I'm here. Like she befriends this woman. And then she goes out and she finds a negative review about the attorney that this woman has. She brings the review to the woman and she tells her, you might want to watch out for him because look at this review. So then the woman fires that attorney and then she gets on with Alina Habba. So Alina Habba goes to Trump and say, hey, the lady that's suing your club, I'm representing her and I can get you a really good deal. And so Trump is like, okay, let me see what you can do. So she totally screws this woman in the settlement. The woman has to pay taxes on the settlement and everything. And
Wow.
then right after that settlement goes through, she's on Trump's legal team.
I can,
And now the reason I found out about that is because the woman who she screwed on that settlement deal is now suing Alina Habba. So that's what she's currently being sued for.
wow.
And when you listen to them say it, they talk about like the left is suing her, we're trying to silence her and all this stuff. That woman has nothing to do with the left. She was a server who was sexually harassed. Mar-a-Lago completely turned a blind eye to it. And Alina Habba came in, screwed her on a settlement, got next to Trump, and now she's on Trump's legal team. And now that woman is suing Alina Habba. It's a bunch of drama, but once you
Wow.
start digging in there, you're like,
I
wait, she did what?
I had no idea. You know, if Alina Habba, when this is all said and done, if Alina Habba isn't in jail, and I don't know that she's done anything to be put in jail, she will be on every fucking bus stop in Florida, and she'll be on TV saying, "Are you a crook? Are you a criminal? Are you definitely guilty? Bitch, I
Yeah,
got you."
yes, she is definitely. I hesitate to say a go-getter, but she is one of those people where she's kind of like a Carrie Lake type of person, where whoever she has to step on, whoever she has to like screw literally and figuratively, she's
Wow.
willing to do it so she can get ahead. You know what I mean? So she's just like one of those people. And like people just look at her and be like, oh, you could have done this, you could have been that. But when you dig into her background, she's always been looking for like that quick money, get ahead type of scheme. And she was able to play Trump and she's pretty much using him to keep going and get as much money as she can.
And
She'll
the thing,
drop him in the end without thinking twice about it, because that seems to be the type of person that she is. But for now, he's bringing her money. She's getting speaking gigs. MAGA loves her. She's able to sell these little FJB bracelet or necklaces that she's hawking now.
Oh, she's
And so
selling
that's,
those? I know she was
yeah,
wearing one. She's selling them now.
yeah, she's selling them. That's
Wow.
bringing her money, her speaking engagements, like these, all this stuff she has going on. That's like Trump is kind of like her sugar daddy in a little way. He's like she's using him to grift and get all this money. So she's not worried about being an attorney. Get out of here.
So yeah, he is kind of a sugar daddy. I don't love you, but give me that money.
Yeah, she could stand next to him and act like he don't smell and everything. Okay, I'm gonna stop.
No, 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 no. You brought us into an area. I'm gonna have to take a break here in a second, but it's funny. I brought up the whole concept of Donald Trump smelling,
Hmm.
and it's crazy. I get Trump-a-fucks coming to me and go, "Oh, that's just childish." Oh no, motherfucker. That's what you've been doing for 7 years. Now, if he didn't stink and I said he stinks, that would be childish. Now I'm just reporting the facts.
So my daughter has an interesting take on this, and I tend to believe her and her background and stuff.
She's a smart girl.
She doesn't think he has a physical problem, and this is why she doesn't mind making fun of him and why I don't mind making fun of his smell. She just really thinks like, how he was never trained to drink out of a glass of water. He never learned how to drive. Just certain things he never learned. She really doesn't think Trump was ever like potty trained and to hold his
Wow. Wow.
because and then if you think about it, I forgot the comedian's name, but she was talking in like 1980 or something about how he smelled. And
Right.
this was in like this was a long like this was has nothing to do with age. It's just like he was never like trained to hold it and then go, just potty train. I don't know how to explain potty training, but he was never trained to do that. So
Wow.
he never learned it. He never
I mean,
learned a lot of stuff.
I can relate to this a little bit. I have a 3-year-old granddaughter who's just now become potty trained. And you take her on and you go and now she just knows instinctively, I got to go
Yeah.
potty. And
But if you don't have anyone training you to do that, you never learn it. And I think most adults would take it upon themselves to learn. But if his smell and his diapers go back to 1980, maybe he was just too lazy to learn. And he figured he has money, so women will just deal with it.
now if you said that about anybody else, I would say that's fucking ridiculous, old soul. But now we're talking about Donald Trump. There's one other aspect of why he may be incontinent. And when you shit your pants, are you incontinent? Is that only when you pee your pants? I don't know why you would know that, but you're sitting here.
I don't know.
I,
All I know is this is the chair and this is like Trump's butt. So
yeah.
all this in between is like soiled
Yeah.
stuff.
Now, what I was going to get at was that some people think it might be the drugs. He claims he doesn't drink or do drugs, but all reports suggest that he does a shitload of Adderall. And it
Yeah.
wouldn't be surprising if he goes overboard and became a little immune over the decades of doing this stuff. Some people even said he'd done cocaine. I don't know if it's true, but some people suggest if you do enough of this Adderall, this is what causes you to be incontinent, if you will.
You know what I just thought? I'm looking forward to this conversation. Garage Door Jeff.
Yeah, he's going to bring it up.
Email
There's
he
no
sent us
question about it.
in about this conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing it.
I'm just thankful, and people are going to get on me about this. I'm thankful that diet pop doesn't cause you to be incontinent because I drink a lot of it and I shouldn't. I know. I'm trying to stop, but that's why I told my wife. She goes, "You got to stop uh, drinking Diet Pepsi." I go, Jesus. I quit drinking alcohol 32, 33 years ago. Okay. I don't
Yeah.
smoke. I don't smoke. I don't binge porn on the internet. Can I have one fucking vice? Just one. Is Diet Pop that bad when you compare it to all this other shit I could be doing?
Yeah,
She,
but you're not addicted to it like Trump is, though, right?
no, no, I'm not addicted to it. But I don't know. I tell you what, old soul, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back. Well, you can always say that there's always going to be a surprise on the Rational Boomer podcast, especially when Old Soul is in. Never in my wildest dreams, and I'm sure those folks listening never thought it would be that we would spend some time talking about scat humor. And I have to give you one joke that as we were off the air, it's my joke. I just thought it was fucking funny, and I'm going to say it again. Uh, Usually what happens when we take a break, I'll get up and go to the bathroom and get some more water or something like that. And I looked at Old Soul and I said, I'm going to say something to you that Donald Trump has never said to anybody. And she said, what's that? And I said, I have to go to the bathroom. I like that. I like that. And I should be ashamed to repeat it and be so proud of it myself, but you know me, I'm shameless. Um, anyway, we're done talking about the scat humor, thankfully. And you mentioned something about something Eric, who's a frequent guest and an emailer on the show, and
Yeah.
you wanted to respond to him about something.
Yeah, it was really important what he said about the $10,000 in the 80s that they were selling the babies for.
Right.
Because when I was looking and I saw the black market for the adoption agency, I didn't mention any prices. And I was so happy when he mentioned the price because it kind of drills it home a little bit more because most of us, when we think about children and babies, we wouldn't put a price tag on them. You know, they're not
Yeah.
groceries or a car or anything transactional. They're children, they're babies. So it's really, really important for him to do that. And I appreciated it when he put that price tag on there. And then it opened my eyes up a little bit more too with the women that stay here. I feel like I've been more coddling than I have been honest with them because it's like when you're at your worst and you're going through a lot, I have to try to find the balance between being honest with them but not overstepping, making them feel uncomfortable or making them feel worse about themselves or their situation. And I was thinking about the woman Cox from Texas, and as much as like she's a brave person and I appreciate what she did and her bringing the spotlight on it. At the end of the day, she's still a Republican woman. She's pro-life. She didn't believe in pro-choice. She was okay with the exceptions because she knew the only way that she would have an abortion is if she met these particular exceptions.
Right.
But she didn't stop to think about the women that didn't fall within those exceptions.
Well, she
It's
didn't
like
care about them.
right. The exceptions that matter to her, okay, I'm cool. But any other woman that falls outside of that exception, she didn't think about that. She didn't really seem to care about that so much. And so I was kind of like lifting her up in a way where I had to sit back and think about her situation and feel empathy and just feel sad that she didn't have to go through that. But it kind of it speaks to the Republican Party as a whole that they have the inability to sympathize or try to understand other people and what they're struggling with and what they're going through unless them themselves are going through it. And that's the only way they could feel something for another person is that they have to experience it first. And so when he was talking about the being transaction and that type of thing, I thought maybe that would hit home for people who couldn't easily put themselves in someone else's shoes. Maybe
Right.
that would make them look at it as a little different when you're looking at it as like, oh, they're selling babies. Because at the end of the day, it's not about being pro-life, it's about money.
Yeah.
And there's money to be made in adoption. So when he said that, I'm like, oh yeah, even with the fertility thing, you know, when you go through fertility treatments, it's not guaranteed. And a lot of times it takes time. So why would they allow for you to take time and build the family way you want when they can force you into adopting and paying money for these babies and in turn they can make a profit off of that. So when
I
he said that, it kind of had my wheels spinning a lot and I appreciated him saying the dollar amount. And also I'm happy that his adoption turned out great for him and he
yeah.
did good.
I think most of them do, but there are some in history and probably currently that don't go quite as well. People who adopt that aren't going through the normal rigors of becoming adopters aren't the greatest people. I'm sure that still happens to this day. What you're talking about with the Republicans, they have no empathy for other people. It is all about money to a large
Yeah.
extent. Even when we're talking about abortion, Republicans support overturning Roe v. Wade, not because they believe it, not because they feel it, not because God told them, but because they see the evangelicals supporting them and giving them money and giving them votes. It's all about making a profit and self-enrichment.
Yeah.
But they do this in everything. You ever noticed how they're real big on laws? Yeah, we gotta get the Democrats on these laws. But when those laws can be turned around on them, oh no, that's not fair. I mean, that's
Yeah.
their whole attitude. It's about we only want to have control of you, but you can't have control of us. There's
Right.
nothing in their mind that says rule the law for everyone is what they want. They don't. They want special treatment, and then they cry and whine like they're victims when they don't get it.
Right. The party of personal responsibility. I think they need to give that mantra up. We've been
Yeah, yeah,
but
no
even though
question.
when you were talking about the low income feeding the children outside
Uh,
of school, I think it was Iowa
yeah,
that
Iowa.
turned down the Head Start program. Because I do blame the Republican politicians a lot, but I'm having to learn to hold the Republican voters just as accountable.
Oh
Because
yeah,
why would you vote for someone like that? And not only that, is they feel like even if they're middle class or even if they're not middle class, but they're still able to scrape by and they're just comfortable with that. Not being able to understand and having your own children and not being able to say, you know what, I don't have to have my children to go hungry for me to say that child shouldn't have to go hungry either. I don't want any child to go hungry. And a lot of these people, they're living paycheck to paycheck, or
right.
they're one cough away from a medical emergency. And at that point, when their children is hungry, then that's when they care about children being hungry. But you should care about it before it affects your family and your children. You should care about people. You should care about children. And so it's just I don't understand. They don't the inability just to relate to other people or understand that sometimes people do struggle at no fault of their own. A lot of people below the poverty line, they get up and they go to work every day and they work 40 plus hours a week. But when you have a job that's not paying you a livable wage, of course you have to live off of government assistance. So instead of saying, hey, pay these people a living wage so that they can stop draining the system or resources, they just say, oh, these people are lazy. They're just sitting at home all day. They're just getting checks. And it's like, no, that's not the case for most people on assistance. You look how much money Walmart makes, and like dang near 90% of their employees is on government assistance.
Right.
That's a problem. You know what I mean? So I that kind of frustrated me. But when he said the dollar amount, it got me thinking about just children in general and how transactional it is for them without any feeling or caring about other people and what they're going through. Like they have to experience it first before they care. I can't understand it, and I hope that I never do. I just know that it's wrong.
Well, the thing about it is the program in Iowa isn't a big deal. It isn't a lot of money. It's $40 per month.
Yeah.
I don't know how much food you're going to get for anybody for $40, but even that's too far for them. That's what's so outrageous.
And a lot of the children in these low income families, and unfortunately, I can relate to this, but they live in food deserts.
Right.
So when I was growing up, we didn't have like grocery stores. So we would walk to like the corner store or whatever, and they didn't have like fresh fruit in there, mostly canned goods, that type of stuff. I think maybe when I was like 10, 11, we got like our first major grocery store that I could actually walk to with a list and make groceries. But they want to say, oh, these children are fat, they're overweight, they're this, they're that. But if you're living in a food desert, you're going to eat what you have access to. So if you don't have access to fruits and vegetables, on top of that, there's nobody there educating them on calorie intake and all that other kind of stuff. So they're just surviving. And I didn't even have to live through that to feel sad for anybody, any child in that situation, and they are incapable of feeling that.
Yeah,
But not only that, but it would cost them $2 million for this Head Start program, right?
right,
Which is the exact amount of money that the governor spent taking migrants and busing them to another state.
right,
So
exactly.
I can pull a publicity stunt with these migrants for $2 million, but when it comes to feeding these kids, ain't nobody got time for that. And the people who vote for them are saying they don't want their tax money going to this program because there may be children who aren't below the poverty line that kind of like slip through the cracks and get to eat for free. And I'm like, so what?
Well, it's funny. There isn't that much scrutiny when they decide to give corporate welfare. They just
Right.
willy-nilly throw off $2 trillion and you
Hmm.
guys are rich already, and we hope for trickle down, but nobody checks that.
Right.
Nobody says, well, it's not trickling down, so let's stop doing it. They just say, let's send them more. You mentioned
Mhm.
something about the Republicans and about how politicians are doing certain things, and the constituents maybe don't know the whole story about it, and they might have a different feeling about it. I think that's a huge problem in this country, and it's not just Republicans. It's
Mhm.
Democrats too. I got a comment on one of my TikToks, and I got a little irritated by it, and I did a TikTok. I didn't put the person's comment and name on it because I didn't want to call out somebody directly, but I did offer up the question, and somebody made this comment on one of my TikToks, and they said, "What's Jack Smith doing? We don't know what he's doing. It's just weak rhetoric. He's doing nothing. Um, Donald Trump should be in jail." And I'm thinking, and so when I came back on, I was a little annoyed. I said, "What are you in a motherfucking coma?" Jack Smith himself has 3 indictments in 3 different jurisdictions,
Mhm.
over 70 felony charges. He's got evidence coming out of everywhere. And you have the audacity to sit here supposedly watching my page and say that Jack Smith is doing nothing. I find that annoying and troubling too. Not only are the Republicans doing this with Fox News and the other things, I got people coming to my page, apparently not listening to shit, and they just take what they hear and they think
Right.
that's the truth. I think that's a
Yeah.
big problem in this country. People are just unaware and too lazy to find out.
Yeah, they take silence as weakness and being vocal and, boastful as strength when it's the complete opposite.
Right,
You have to look at Jack Smith and he's fighting a system within a system. So like Trump gets to file all these frivolous lawsuits and all these delay tactics and games that he's playing and all that crap. And it's working against Jack Smith, but he is a part of the system. So in a way, he has to fight back against the system that he's trying to make work. That doesn't happen overnight. And then at the same time, being held to a certain standard where he cannot publicly fight back and defend himself. The
right,
only voice that he has is his work, and his work is speaking for itself. Look at his filings, look at the rulings that he's getting, look at the progress that he's making. Like you just said, look at the indictments that he's gotten, look at the court dates that he's gotten. And then in Florida, I don't know how he's dealing with that heifer, but he's dealing with her. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So it's like, I don't know why people want this instant gratification, and that's not how it works. You have to read more than you watch, and you have to listen more than you talk. It's just paying attention, being observant, and that's how you learn. That's how you know what's going on. But a lot of people, they're just watching whatever, listening to whoever, and then they're just spitting it back out without actually sitting down and asking themselves like basic questions. Like, okay, how did he get 4 indictments or 3 indictments if he's not doing anything? They didn't
right.
just fall out of the sky. And it doesn't take a smart person to point that out to them. That's just a basic question. But I think people want an instant result. They want an instant gratification. They don't want to have to do any type of work to make change happen.
Right,
Like
right.
we have to vote. We have to speak to people. We have to make sure that the truth is out there. That takes work. You can't do that just by sitting at home watching television and tweeting. It doesn't work like that.
No, it
So
doesn't.
I think people just want it to happen overnight, and that's just not going to happen.
I think you and I, old, can agree that 4 indictments, 91 felony charges, evidence coming out of everywhere.
Mhm.
That's not nothing. That's a
It's
lot of
not.
shit. That's
Yeah.
never I've said this before. This is not only the biggest news and the biggest investigations and indictments against any former president. I don't know of any circumstance where one criminal or one defendant has had 91 felony charges against them. This seems like he's the most prolific criminal in the history of this country, over and above being a former president.
He's definitely the biggest traitor we've ever seen in this
Yeah.
country. And then there's cults, and then there's political cults. And I've never seen a political cult like this outside of Germany. And honestly, it looks like he's trying to do a repeat. I just don't think that we will allow him the opportunity to do that.
No, I
And I
don't think
think,
so.
yeah, and I think he knows it. And I think his supporters know it too. So it's like you can only lie to yourself so much, but this is yourself that you lying to.
The other
Sooner
thing
or
I,
later, you will have to deal with it.
yeah, the other thing I've been seeing a lot of is, people know that on TikTok I block a lot of Trumplefucks, and for the longest time I haven't really got much kickback on my content. I just want to say one other thing before I get to that. You made a good point. You got to listen more and talk less.
Yeah,
Now
absolutely.
people will say to me, "Well, Mike, you talk a lot." Old Soul, when she's on, she talks a lot. I can speak for myself and I can guess for you. As much as I talk, I listen a lot more. I need to
Yeah.
have something to talk about. So I need to know
Hmm.
about stuff. I need to learn about stuff. And like you do, research about stuff before I can even talk about it. I do listen more than I talk, and that's fucking hard to believe. But I know you
Yeah.
do too, because you're researching fucking everything. Please don't Google me, okay? Because I don't want you finding out some shit.
Yeah, people don't, and it's so sad that people don't understand. They don't expect for you to listen to them.
No.
I've never been in a relationship where it hasn't creeped out the person that I'm dating, that I'm listening to them. Or they'll be talking and I'll just be listening, and then they'll be like, I'm like, yeah, or they'll think I'm not paying attention, or do you have an attitude or whatever? It's like, no, I'm listening to you talk. When you're done talking and I can process what you just said, I will respond. But I'm not going to sit here and go toe to toe, because if I'm talking, I'm not listening. And if I'm thinking of the next thing that I'm going to say, I'm listening, but I'm not actively listening, and you have to know how to listen to people. And that's the only way you can come to any kind of resolution. And then I don't really like to talk if I don't know what I'm talking about anyway. So
All
the
right.
only way to learn is to listen.
I saw a T-shirt one time that I loved, and it said, "I'm not really listening to you. I'm just waiting for my turn to talk." And that's so fucking true with most people. I mean, I've always had this argument with my wife has always been concerned about, dressing right, making sure, wondering what other people think and all that stuff. I said, "Honey, you have to understand, you're putting too much thought into this because most people aren't thinking about you because they're too busy thinking about themselves."
Yeah.
And I've tested that out over the years. I've been able to separate myself from worrying about what other people think, obviously. I mean, if you watched my TikToks, clearly I don't care. But you know what? I don't run into ultimate disasters not worrying about what other people think of me. Like for example, the way I dress. When I was working and stuff like that,
Hmm.
and you can acknowledge this because we met. Um, when I retired from going to work and doing the things I did, I said I refuse to wear anything uncomfortable anymore. I wear pullover shirts, long in the winter and short in the summer. I wear those jogger pants because they have no fucking belt. They're loose as hell. I wear slip-on shoes, and that's what I wear every day. And people say, "Aren't you going to dress up?" I go, "Well, they're clean. That's about the best you can hope for with me." And you know what? The world
You
hasn't
sound like
ended.
such a man.
Well, but the world hasn't ended because I don't care what other people think, and I'm not trying to dress to appeal to anybody else. And I think
Yeah.
people get their minds a little fucked up when they worry too much about that because people aren't that detailed about other folks. Unless you get some of the people that, more so women that will say, "Did you see what she was wearing?" But guys
I
don't
think
do
that
that.
comes down to being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah,
And you know what I mean? If you're comfortable with yourself and how you're presenting yourself to the world, then what somebody else's opinion, it really doesn't matter. But if you're uncomfortable with something about yourself, then you're worried that the outside world is seeing you how you see yourself.
right,
So I think if you're comfortable with yourself first, it makes it less likely that you're going to care what anybody else has to say.
right.
So anytime I'm starting to worry about what somebody else is thinking about me or what they're saying, I have to kind of like step back and be like, yo, what's going on with me? Why do I care? And normally it's traced back to me. Like maybe I'm feeling bloated that day or I got a breakout that day or whatever. And I'm assuming everybody else is noticing it. But it's not. It's just me and it's just in my head. That's all.
And it's how you react to these people. A lot of people get real embarrassed about it. If someone does
Mhm.
that to me, I go to observation. I'm with you. Yeah, you're right about that. I maybe said this on the podcast before, but I was at my son's place and my little granddaughter Junie was there, and she's always saying crazy shit. I mean, I don't even know where this shit comes from, but she comes up to me and she's gonna hug me and then and she pats me on the tummy. And she goes, "Grandpa, you got a bigger tummy." And my and I said, I know, honey, it's fine, but you just don't want to say that to other people. You can say it to Grandpa because Grandpa loves you. You can say whatever you want, but don't say that to
Yeah.
other people. And her dad, my son, says, "Junie, don't say that. That's mean." She she looks at my son and goes, "He knows." But but a lot of people really are worried, and this is part and parcel to what the Republican Party is because they don't have any substance. It's all about
Right.
perception with them. They
Mm-hmm.
want you to believe they're tough and smart and fiscally um, conservative, and none of that is true. That's the ironic thing is they're so particular about what people's perceptions are of them, but none of it is true. It's all a
Well,
lie,
yeah, because they know the truth. They
right?
know how much what giving tax breaks to the wealthy does to this country. They know that. They know the truth about themselves and they see it in themselves. They're worried about their base seeing it. Like they
Right.
know that we see it, most of us, but they're worried about their base seeing it. They're worried about those Republicans that are still like hanging in, kind of on the fence. They're worried about those people seeing it. So the wild projections that they're making, it's just because they don't want the people that they're fooling right now, they don't want those people to see it at the end of the day. You can see Ted Cruz's interview, Comer's interview. You can just see the insecurity just like seething off of these people. But it's not for us, it's for the people that they're fooling right now. And I think they have to know somewhere that this deception that they have going on is only temporary. It's not gonna last much longer. And I just see them doing everything they can to make it last as long as possible. I just wish the people would just wake up and just realize there's a lost cause on some of this crap they got going on.
It's funny you mentioned Ted Cruz, and he hasn't been too much in the media as of late. He's kind of
Hmm.
a forgotten commodity, and Jay seems to think who's from Texas, thinks he might have a chance of getting beaten, which would be nice. Um, but did you see the video clip of Ted Cruz giving a talk in front of other dumb fuck Trump-a-fucks? And he was talking about how, he was talking about how to be a man and what women want. And he said, I can understand why Democratic women are angry right now because if they had to go home and go to bed with these weenie Democrat men. And I'm looking at him and I'm going, wow, uh, call it the pot calling the kettle black because this guy is probably the biggest weenie in the world. He's like He's like the
He's
uh,
such a douche.
he's like the skinniest fat guy in a room talking shit about the fat people. You know, it's just and this is why nobody likes this guy. I mean, even his own caucus hates this guy. I hope we're
So
done with
fake,
him.
phony, insincere, plastic. Like he is just, and you just when he's talking, you know it's a bunch of crap. Like there's nothing sincere about him. It's the same thing with Kevin McCarthy. You knew they didn't mean anything that they were saying. It was the fakest thing ever. Put some effort into being believable, you know? And
Yeah.
I don't even think the people in the audience was really feeling him like that. It was just a whole little whoop ha, whatever it is that they do. It's just so, I don't know. The last time I saw him was, I think, a couple of days ago when he did that interview on Fox talking about his book and his podcast.
He was
But
really
other than
pimping
that,
that podcast, didn't he?
he tried to.
Well, I think he still is because I think he's going to be out of a job and he's going to try to still start selling advertising on a
I hope
podcast that
so.
only. Well, yeah, it's ridiculous. You know, we talk about dumb fuck Republicans and Rick Scott. No, Scott Perry is his name. Yeah,
Mm,
Scott Perry. Scott Perry, I think he's in Pennsylvania. They in August of 2022, they grabbed his phone. Now, what people thought at the time was that, well, they got his phone, now they're going to go through it. And that's not what happens. They get the phone just to keep it safe. And then they have to go through court to get access to look at the text messages and such.
yeah.
And they got that. And it might get appealed or whatever. Um, but this one interests me. Scott Perry reminds me of Mark Meadows because he was kind of a central point to a lot of people. A
Yeah.
lot of people, a lot of members of Congress, the Trump administration, the Oath Keepers, and Jeffrey Clark, who was in the DOJ, who Scott Perry introduced to Donald Trump and was going to make him the AG and all that stuff. Um, we were talking about uh, Jack Smith, and there's been some things that have come out recently. I really believe that people are going to be dumbfounded when they find out all the evidence Jack Smith has, because we know a lot right now, but I don't
Yeah.
think we know even half of it. And what's going to come out of Scott Perry's phone or Mark Meadows' phone is going to be absolutely devastating, not only to Donald Trump, but everybody else. And that's when the House is going to come falling down on the members of Congress.
I think I'll be pretty shocked by some of the stuff. And I think by now I should be over being shocked, but I think I will be. I'm dumbfounded right now for a whole different reason. And
Do tell.
I don't know if it's just incompetence, arrogance, stupidity, lack of experience, no real people around you. Like, I think every circle should have at least one hood person in there. Like, put me in your circle because they keep getting caught on tape, on phones, on text messages, on cameras. How do you not have a burner phone when you committing crimes? You gonna use your own personal cell phone to do this?
Like you said, they need you got your common drug dealer on the corner in the bad side of town that is smarter than that.
Right. I was so like, I'm just really like, even the last tape of Trump and the RNC chick on tape, pretty much committing bribery and trying to get these people to lie on tape. It's like,
Well, that's the ironic
don't
thing
have
is,
nobody that you can send down there to have a personal conversation with these people. Like I would have like somebody like, hey, I need you to go to Georgia and talk to so and so for me. Or I'm gonna have an event in Georgia and I'm gonna pull this person to the side and have a conversation with them. I'm not gonna be on tape talking about a crime.
yeah, even John Gotti didn't stay in his own club. He said, let's go for a walk.
Yeah. I'm just
Yeah, it
It's not
is.
even like Hansel and Gretel breadcrumbs. This is like
Well,
it's so
that's
weird to me. I'm still dumbfounded for the fact that he had to fight to keep evidence from his personal cell phone that he was using. Because if it was me and the FBI came to take my phone, here you go. Ain't nothing on there but conversations between me, my family, Boomer, and my daughter.
right,
That's it. Ain't
right,
nothing else on
right,
there. Because
right.
I'm not walking around with the evidence in my pocket.
It is pretty
It's comical.
something. Now, when you heard that audio tape coming out of Michigan, where he and Ronna McDaniel were coercing these people to not sign off on the certification in 2020, what struck me is that when we heard the tape from Georgia with Brad Raffensperger, we said,
Yeah,
"Holy shit,
yeah,
that's devastating." This audio tape in Michigan is fucking worse.
yeah,
He's actually committing the crime. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's black and white. They're committing the crime on audio tape. And now I have to wonder, of course, the feds, Jack Smith will use it to show this guy's doing it all over the place. He can't charge him for that one, but he can, show this habitual behavior. But you
yeah.
have to wonder if Michigan isn't going to do a Georgia and send out some indictments, because that's clearly a crime.
Yeah, they were talking about bribery, I read somewhere. But I just started, I called the first one the perfect phone call number one. This is the perfect phone call number two, and I'm just waiting for perfect phone call three, four, whatever. Because I'm pretty sure as some of like these people start to like get questioned and they are thinking about their own future and accountability that they may have, they're going to start dropping evidence that they have. So I think there's more to come out from it. I think I was just more shocked that, oh, it's another tape. It was kind of like when Tupac died, every time you turned around, it was a new tape coming. Like, is he dead or what? But
Well,
it, I don't
well,
get it.
when they talked about getting people's phones, I know a lot of people said, and I thought myself, well, yeah, you spend 3 days getting the phone, surely they're gonna fucking erase everything and break the phone, and they don't.
No, they don't even throw the phone in the ocean. They're walking around with the evidence in their pocket. Like, you have to think about it. Like, how difficult was it to go to T-Mobile and get a new phone and then just type in your contacts and then just throw your phone in the ocean? Why do you even have a phone when the FBI pull up after you've already seen them seize other people's phones first? You know what? I don't know.
Well,
I think they
it's a
must want to get caught. They just want to get caught at this point because they're not trying to get away with nothing.
well, I think it's a combination of arrogance and ignorance.
Mm,
I think when this all started with Donald Trump, they all knew what was going on was wrong or illegal, but they assumed that's how politics works.
yeah,
They believed that Donald Trump would be powerful enough to steamroll all this shit. They were going to be okay, even though they know they were committing crimes. Well, now they're finding out different. They fucked around and found out. And now they've got to be absolutely a lot like Donald Trump shitting his pants because, I mean, these people don't see themselves as criminals. They see
hmm,
themselves as, whether it be the fake electors in Michigan or somebody like Scott Perry, they don't ever think about going to jail. And now they're
right.
sitting there thinking that they may be going to jail. I'm also hearing, um, and I don't know how people got this, but they were talking about some filing that Jack Smith made recently. And they said that something in that filing kind of half suggested that there might be some sitting members of Congress that will be witnesses. That does not surprise me. There'll be a lot of motherfuckers bailing on Donald Trump in Congress because they are not the most ethical folks. They'll throw him to the wolves in a minute.
You know what I just thought about when you said that? I just thought about a reason why they might still have their phones, and this would be the only thing that makes sense, is they were holding on to those phones for if they needed to use it in the future. You know,
Leverage.
if they needed to use it for leverage, if they needed to use it as a bargaining chip with Jack Smith or whatever, maybe that could be why they were holding on to the phones. I can get that, but I can't excuse it completely because it still should have been on a burner phone, hidden somewhere, not
Yeah.
walking around with it on your person. And then when it come time to make that deal, say, hey, I can get you this, 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 and this, but I need that deal first, and then bring out the burner phone. So I can kind of see why they were holding on to it, because if you're surrounded by untrustworthy people and you know they will step over you in a second, you're going to want to keep dirt on some of these people. You're going to want to keep some of these conversations. So maybe that could be why they're holding on to the phones. And I don't doubt that it would be members of Congress, just like the January 6th rioters. Some of them are going to be testifying at the
Right.
trial. There's no honor among these thieves. There's no loyalty there at all. It's just part of the game. It's just like a bigger scale mob organization going down.
But
That's all.
this is where the ignorance comes in. If you're cognizant enough to say, I better keep this phone
Hmm.
in case there's trouble so I can get out of trouble or use a bargaining chip in my phone. If you're cognizant about doing that, enough to do that, wouldn't you be cognizant enough to go, maybe I just won't break the law. Maybe I'll do the right thing.
There's a good, decent person, but they're not. It makes sense to us to be like, I don't want to go to jail, so I might not want to commit any crimes, right? They don't see it like that. And plus, they see themselves as above whatever. So it's kind of like, oh, if I do get caught, I can pull a couple strings here and there. I know this person, that person. Maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe I'll take a year or two off of politics, come out with, I clean my life up and jump back into it. Like, I don't think I think they understood that it could be some kind of consequences, but I don't think they understood the severity of what it is that they would be facing.
I know when I've been in business, I've told the stories about selling large loads of things to other people who want them. I was confronted with many situations uh, where I could tell somebody was pulling a scam.
Hmm.
And some of those people wanted to include me in that scam. Say, listen, man, we just do this, we'll make some money. And I could see how exactly we would make a lot of money.
Yeah,
But there's no way I'm going to fucking do that. Why would anybody with common sense do something like that? I mean, these are horribly flawed persons,
yeah,
arrogant and ignorant and just bullies to say, yeah, I know I can get away with that. And that seems to be rampant in Congress, both with Democrats and Republicans. They've
right.
been risen to this lofty level and they think they can do anything and they think they're special.
Yeah,
That is a deep problem in our politicians on
right.
all
And
levels.
yeah, and it's the selfishness too when you think
Yeah,
about that type of mentality. Because, if someone came to me with certain ideas, whether I work at a certain place and I have access to whatever,
right.
and someone approaches me with a way to get some money, even though like at certain times I was like really struggling with my daughter and I could use that fast money. But then I have to sit back and think about, okay, well, if something happens to me, what happens to her? So I have to like think about other things outside of myself, like what's going to happen to my daughter, or the last time my mother got out of prison. Okay, so I'm gonna put a small child on her when she's trying to rebuild her life. Like I can instantly see that ripple effect, and I know that it's not worth it. With and same thing with you, like I got a wife and kids. I can't put myself or my family in this situation. Like I'm not going to do that. But when you think about people in Congress, they don't think about what's going to happen to their wives, their children, their family, their constituents. They don't think about any of that. They're in that moment thinking about themselves and that instant gratification that they are going to get. So that's the difference between when you're thinking like them and when you're thinking like just regular, decent, hardworking people.
Well, and over and above the worries of the ramifications or the punishment from doing such a thing, I think for a lot of people, certainly you, certainly me, you're just decent enough where you wouldn't want to do that to somebody else. It
Yeah.
would be something that would haunt you. The one thing I learned about business, and I think we're looking at that in politics, if you're in business and you come across somebody, and I had occasion to do that, that find themselves in financial trouble, and they want to do this deal because it'll help them get out of trouble, and they're
Mhm.
frantic and they're desperate. Those are the people you don't want to deal with
Right.
because they might be good people, but they are so frantic and so desperate that they will do things. And then you know what those people do? I think it's the same thing we're seeing in Congress. They will justify everything they do.
Yep.
They will work it out in their head saying, well, I did this, but I had to because of this and this and this. So it's the right thing to do. They will talk themselves into doing the most egregious shit just to save their ass. And unfortunately, other people get hurt in the process. And
Yeah, and you see
politicians
it,
do it all the time.
yeah, you see it on a wider scale with certain individuals. Like the first person that comes to my mind is Mike Johnson,
Mm-hmm.
because he is a true believer. But the scary part about his belief system is the ends justify the means. So he could stand there and make excuses for Trump. He could stand there and lie. He can do every shady, dirty deal in the book. But the ends justify the means, because if I can get us over here to a Christian nation, or if I can do this or I can do that, it justifies all of his prior bad acts that he's done. And so I think a lot of the justification that we're seeing from them is they're telling themselves, well, if I do this, we'll be better off in the end. And so it kind of gives themselves permission to do the things that they're doing.
I agree. They're risking everything for the greater good. And
Basically, yeah.
and then once we can get to that point, it'll be fine. Then I can be a good guy again. I mean, it's like those people down in Florida,
Oh, yeah.
that couple, I don't even remember their name, but they're highly religious, anti-LGBT, and then we find out that he rapes a woman, and it was part of a uh, uh, she was disappointed in the fact that the wife didn't show up, and now there's a video of the wife who hates LGBTQ in a sexual situation with another woman. It's just it it's almost like, we don't want you peasants to be doing this bad stuff. I mean, we can't because we're kings and queens, but you
Right.
peasants can't do this. And I, I was expecting this couple to really go in hiding, or, I mean, because they're exposed for being hypocrites. They're exposed for being frauds. And you'd
Republican
think,
Party don't care about hypocrisy.
no, they don't. They don't at all. And they're still out there acting loud and proud and trying to blackmail $2 million out of the Republican Party. And
Yeah.
it's just fucking crazy. I mean, there was a time in the media when somebody was exposed for something far less serious than what we're seeing now, and people just went away and you never saw them again. There was some shame. And that's the thing about the Republican Party. There's absolutely no shame. You can say, you stole this, we have video, we have proof, and they'll just say, they'll ignore it and move on to the next thing. It's truly amazing to me that they can do that. And then they think it works too, that nobody
Yeah.
will pay attention to it if they don't.
Yeah, he is the type of guy, like with the woman. I haven't heard of any other allegations against him or whatever. But I was just kind of looking at the whole situation, and the fact that the third person in the group came over and she only wanted to be there if the wife was there lets me know that she was into the wife, not him. She was just
Right,
tolerating
right.
him because of the wife. And I think that's what triggered him, is that he wasn't as alpha as he thought he was. This woman, she don't want you, she wants your wife. And so it's not justifying his actions, but I do think that's why he did it, because he doesn't expect to be like rejected in any type of way. And he's just supposed to be this good alpha guy. He got money and power and all this other kind of stuff. And when she rejected that, it caused him to want to like take away that power from her, like have that dominance over her and kind of like knock her down a peg or two. I think that's where he was coming from when he did that. And for his wife, the fact that that does not bother her is so sickening to me.
Yeah,
How
it
does that,
is.
as a woman, how does that not bother you? That he wanted to control this other woman and the means in which he did it. And you're just out there holding hands, having rallies, talking, and
And
I'll never understand it.
I'm sure he felt like he had some familiarity with this woman, and he could get
Yeah.
away with being a little aggressive, never imagining that she would say anything. But when I think about, never leave me a chance to tell a story about my granddaughter, but she did something that reminds me of the Republicans. You know how they can do something out in the open and then deny it and expect
Mhm.
nobody to see it. When I go see my granddaughter, we have to play hide and seek. She's 3. So she'll go hide with grandma someplace. And she's horrible at it because she'll hide under a blanket and you see. And this one time and I got a picture of it, it's awesome. But she and grandma um, went into the walk-in closet, my son's walk-in closet with all his clothes. Now I always check the closet because that's where they hide frequently. So my granddaughter knew this and she said, I'm going to take this a step further. So she picks up this basket and she hands it to my wife. Says, put that on your head, grandma. And then she takes a box and puts it over her head and it comes down to her waist. And she says, grandma, he'll never see us if we do this. So I walk in and there's my granddaughter sitting with her upper portion of her body in a box and her feet hanging out the bottom. And I got to act like I can't see her. And I see that kind of like the Republican Party. You don't see anything here. I can't see you. You can't see me. And it's amazing to me that they still think that's going to work. I mean, maybe it
But
does with the dumb people, but Jesus Christ, the vast majority of people going, it's ridiculous.
it does kind of work for them because it's like the emperor with no clothes. Everybody knew he didn't have any clothes on, but nobody was willing to say anything and point it out. So he's still strutting around and until, it takes a child to point it out, like, hey, this dude don't have any clothes on.
Yeah.
So I think that's what emboldens them is they're just strutting around with no clothes on and everybody can see it. But when you have media outlets and supporters and voters and constituents and members in Congress who act like they don't see what's going on, it just lets them continue on with the same type of behavior. And that's the purpose in voting them out by huge numbers is to let them know, yeah, we see you don't have any clothes on. We know what's going on.
I will
But
tell
I
you,
think that's what we have to do in order for them to see that we see them. We know what they're doing because until then, they're going to think they're getting over.
well, I will tell you this, if there was ever occasion where Donald Trump had no clothes except for a 4XL adult diaper, there would be some fucking talk. People would mention that. Even the Republicans would go, come on, come on. You know what I don't understand is Donald Trump, since he's wore this diaper from the 80s and he stinks,
Yeah,
as a woman, explain to me this.
I can't.
He's supposed to be
You can
this
ask, but
playboy
I
that
cannot explain.
he's supposed to be a playboy, a Casanova. You got
Uh-huh.
this guy that's got flop sweat and smells like shit and wears a diaper. How do you even fake that you're sexually interested in this motherfucker? I don't get it. That he has a lot of money? God damn it. If
Well,
that's all that's important to you, nobody else should date you because you're a sick,
I
sick
have to
fuck.
be honest. I've never needed money that desperately,
No.
and I've never needed a green card either. So,
Well, there you go. You don't need the money or the green card, so you have the ability to be a little more picky about it.
yeah,
Well, that's
yeah.
good. That's good. I just think um, uh, a big odor is a turnoff for most people. I just
Especially, I don't think just like basic things that we learned as children. I don't think he learned it. Even when you had Ed on the show one time, and Ed was talking about how lazy he is for the simple fact with his spray tan, he only kind of like sprays this part of his face like it's a Halloween mask or something,
right,
and his
right.
neck and everything else is a completely different color. I just really do think that he is lazy, but he was never taught basic
Hygiene.
skills. Yeah, there you go. I don't think he was taught basic hygiene or anything to that effect. And
Yeah, yeah. And
I
then
think
you
that's what
guys.
it boils down to. Because my daughter, honestly, She's like, I could write a whole dissertation about why I think he's not potty trained. I was like, please don't get that to your professor. We're not supposed to do
No,
that.
no, we're trying to get you through college. We don't need that shit. But then you got Ron DeSantis, who
Oh
I,
my God.
on a positive side, I can say that nobody's accused him of smelling. So he's got that going for him, but he's stupid and he's awkward and he's weird. And I used something, somebody thought I made this up and I didn't make it up, but I'm stealing it because they want to steal it, and that's fine. But now I mean, this guy's done. He's not going to be the nominee. He's fallen off the table. But have you noticed that whenever he goes out and talks now, he just stands there looking awkward. And his wife,
Um,
who was once identified as the Walmart Melania, Casey, of course, she's the only one talking. I mean, women are in the Republican Party, women are supposed to be the second class citizens. How in the hell, he must be desperate if he's just stopping talking. He just can't trust himself to say anything intelligent.
I think I think he's slow.
I think so too.
I really do. Like when I was growing up, they would say in polite conversation, he's touched in the head.
Touched,
And
yeah.
I really do think that when I think about him, especially the last few times that I've seen him just kind of like sitting there, like I, I really do get that feeling from him. And he's very awkward around people, and they figured to clean it up a little bit to let her talk, but they didn't tell him, don't just sit there like someone took your battery out of your back. Like you could kind of maybe like jump in, laugh, smile, whatever, but he just sits there like I've
I
never seen anything like it.
the I made the comparison, and this is probably um, insensitive, and I don't mean it to be, but he reminds, with his facial features and just the awkwardness, he seemed like the kid in middle school that ate lunch alone. You know,
Oh,
nobody wanted to catch that shit from this. I mean, it's really odd. And now if he has some kind of, somebody says, what if he has some kind of affliction? Would you feel bad then? No, no, I don't. I hope he has an affliction.
yeah, because if he wasn't so cruel,
Yeah.
it's kind of like if there's something wrong with you and you're struggling with something and you have no ability to feel any type of empathy towards anybody else who may be struggling with something or who may be afflicted by something, then you don't get the same grace that you're unwilling to give somebody else.
Oh, hell
So
no.
I don't feel bad for him. I think it's just so awkward and like cringy when I'm watching them there. And then like today I was watching, I don't know why this popped in my mind, but I was like, how did they make three babies? Like I couldn't have did it. Like I
No,
couldn't have did it at all. But
I mean, it's both for Donald Trump um, and Casey. But
do you think part of his problem is because she does have more of a presence? So you say more of like a dominating type of personality. So do you think that maybe at home, because he is not feeling the way that he wants to, maybe he's just taking that out on everybody else and abusing his position of power? Like that's kind of what I was thinking
yeah,
that's led
probably.
him down this path, which is pretty unfortunate because there's nothing wrong with being with a strong woman.
He kind of reminds me of a cop who got bullied
Mm,
in school, now has a little
yeah,
power, and he's going to exercise and show how strong he is because he's been nothing but weak his whole life. I mean, let's be honest. He was in the military.
yeah.
You remember what
He
his
was a
job in
bully
the,
then too.
but you remember what his job in the military was.
He worked for JAG, didn't he?
No, 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 no. And this kind of ties in with Donald Trump. He he worked with a section that did the urinalysis for the
Oh,
members. And
yeah.
and and he never even rose to the main guy. He was the intermediate guy. So
Yeah.
I picture him as, the doctor or whatever going in and doing the urinalysis, then
Hmm.
handing it to Ron, who then in turn hands it to somebody else competent. That's a
Hmm.
level of excellence that Ron DeSantis is. Um,
How
he
fitting.
he
Poopy
handles
pants and
he handles urine. Yeah, that sounds like governor material to me, and president material to me. I'm gonna wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Old Soul, I want to thank you for coming in. It's always a great pleasure to talk to you, as it is with all the listeners, but you especially.
Thank
Um,
you.
and I say that because I mean it, and because everybody else who's listening to this think it. So I appreciate you uh, agreeing to come on with regularity. It's a big help to me, and uh, I enjoy the conversation. I get tired of hearing myself talk sometimes.
This is
How,
fun. It always goes by quick.
it does
It
go by
really
quick.
does.
It
Yeah.
does. It does. And for the first time, we've gotten into bodily excretion. So we're going to have to ramp it up next week, with something even more ridiculous. I just want to say too, the reason we went down that road, Old Soul had nothing to do with it. It was my adolescent behavior that sucked her into it. So don't blame Old Soul for that. But well, thanks very much. We'll talk to you next week, but Happy New Year,
Yeah.
2024. It's going to be busy, it's going to be stressful, but I think there's going to be a lot of positive coming. So I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Hopefully, we can reduce some stress and, I can find some more of my grandmother's words of wisdom that people like to hear and spread that around.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you, Old Soul. And for those of you listening, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.